A big surprise at Trump Tower this morning as rap star Kanye West meets with President-elect Donald Trump. Details on what they discussed later. But first, new developments on the transition front. The President-elect confirms he will nominate ExxonMobil CEO Rex Tillerson to be Secretary of State. Former Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice praised Tillerson as a, quote, excellent choice. And former Defense Secretary Robert Gates called him a man of great integrity who will protect the interests of the U.S. Many Democrats are raising concerns about Tillerson, but Charles Krauthammer has a warning for those lawmakers.
If the Democrats go after Tillerson on the Russia ties, it will be a delightful festival of hypocrisy. For 20 years, I've been as soft on the Russians as you can come. And then all of a sudden, they have discovered that the Russians are not our friends. So this is quite a flip-flop. And well, look, the famous moment all of us remember, Obama mocking Romney for saying that the Russians are a big threat. Now, all of a sudden, they're becoming Cold Warriors. I don't think it's going to look very good.
Yes, that's right. We did talk about that a little bit, and that show was after ours. So maybe everybody's watching the 5. Eric, I wanted to ask you something about, no, that was a compliment to us and to the rest of everybody else at Fox and Charles Krauthammer. Yeah. We're just following his lead over here. One of the things that people usually ask themselves is, why don't more people that are in business ever want to be in government? Now you have a situation where the president-elect is leaving business in order to go into government, and you have the Secretary of State chosen to leave ExxonMobil, a gigantic company, one of the biggest in the world, to go into government. Good thing.
It's a fantastic thing. I think it's great for America that we can get the titans of business to come over to basically, I mean, this is going to sound terrible, but you make about, $205,000 a year as the Secretary of State. This guy probably makes $205 million a year. He says, I'm going to forego that to come over. And it's called public service for a reason. You are serving the public. He could be better suited continuing his career. Now, Rex Tillerson was going to step down, I believe, in a year anyway. He's going to leave Exxon. He's going to retire. I just think it's fantastic to have such successful people in various forms, in various spots in the government. Anytime you can stack your team with the best players from different, it's like a football team, right? You put the best players on your team. If you got to move a quarterback to wide receiver, go ahead and do it. As long as you have the best athletes on the field, I think Trump is accumulating the best athletes in the political field. But
it isn't without controversy, Juan. So what is your take on this, or what are you hearing from some consternation on the left and the right, especially about possible ties to Russia?
Well, just continuing, picking up on Eric's analogy, I think this is bringing in superstars. But the thing is, if you bring in a superstar singer to a football team, people are like, because he has no experience in politics. What you could say is he has experience in dealing diplomatically with leaders of all sorts of foreign nations.
What was that word?
Diplomatically. That's what I said.
Top diplomat.
No. Different is you're trying to make a profit, or you're trying to understand the best interests of the United States of America. And that's why you hear complaints from people like Amnesty International about human rights records, or that's why you hear complaints from people who are concerned that, in fact, when you talk about issues like climate change, that ExxonMobil, protecting their own profits and interests, has long been trying to downplay the impact of climate change on the world. But you also hear then from Republicans, and this is what I think everybody needs to tune into, because there's a big push on now to get Condi, Rice, Robert Gates, and the Republican establishment to endorse him. But guess what? There are lots of people, McCain, Graham, and others who say, what's this with the best friend of Vladimir Putin at a time when we're worried about the effects of the Russian hacking on the election? It just doesn't look good. It's going to be a big confirmation conflagration.
But Kimberly, too, looking back, though, when Romney was a candidate for president and he brought up concerns about Russia, the left, especially even President Obama during the re-election campaign during that debate, mocked him.
And was dismissed.
And now the left is worried about Russia. I have concerns about Russia, too, but, I mean, it's a little hard to swallow that now all of a sudden they're concerned about Russia on the left.
Right. I mean, but
the right's always concerned
about
Russia.
But this is another example of the height of liberal hypocrisy, and this is just another attempt, a poor, weak attempt to try to cast aspersions on a very strong pick, somebody who's a patriot, who wants to serve the this country, who's highly regarded by those that we admire, like Condoleezza Rice, who suggested this pick to the President-elect Donald Trump. And I have a quote here from Rex Tillerson I think is pretty compelling. He said, "The global free market for energy provides the most effective means of achieving U.S. energy security by promoting resource development, enabling diversification, multiplying our supply channels, and encouraging efficiency and spurring innovation." Those principles and that specific ideology can be applied to the Secretary of State position. You want somebody who is not going to be duped or fooled by these international foreign leaders. There's a lot at stake here in terms of what we're dealing with overseas, a lot of the number of conflicts that we're engaged in. This is somebody who isn't just brand new to the table, that's not going to have any idea. He's going to be well versed in what's happening internationally and be able to apply his skills of diplomacy that he used on behalf of Exxon to take it to business grades on behalf of the United States.
I did hear some interesting criticism today, Greg. Actually, I read it about because Rex Tillerson has been in the corporate world so much, and he's been a good soldier in terms of ExxonMobil and doesn't talk about anything. So nobody really knows what his personal political philosophy is, which doesn't necessarily bother me, but gives others some pause.
Well, we know that Robert Gates and Condi likes him. Has nothing to do with the fact that they might have worked for him. But anyway, this is...
Exxon was a client of their company.
Yeah, the two words here are pendulum swing. We're moving from babies to adults. Imagine it's Donald Trump is essentially coming home from work, and he's having all the little kids put on their jammies and sending them to bed while he goes to play bridge and drink gin. That is what you're seeing metaphorically with what's happening in this shifted administration. Think about all the childlike fantasies that we've had to tolerate for the last 8 years. No use for fossil fuels, let's look at windmills. No use for law enforcement, let's talk about peace marches. No use for anti-terror actions, let's talk about tolerance. No use for borders, let's talk about white privilege instead. So every nomination that we're seeing right now is an act of progress towards an ending this protracted adolescent behavior that we've seen for 8 years. We're actually seeing adults entering the House and the children leaving.
You're telling me that I should believe that Donald Trump is the adult?
No, if you look at these are all adults who understand how the world works. The world works on a commodity, oil, fossil fuels. It doesn't work on windmills and solar power. We also have to think about how is civilization run? Law enforcement.
Well, there was another movement on the transition front because even though not officially announced, it does look like Rick Perry, the former governor of Texas, Eric, is going to become the Secretary of Energy. That was actually, I think it was the one that he forgot to mention during his debate, or the one that he wanted to eliminate.
Yeah, and clearly the reason why, if this ends up being the pick, I think Donald Trump was probably looking for the guy who had the most experience in the state of Texas with energy production. At the time, I guess, I think energy production could actually expand throughout the country, and Texas will be a big player in that. But I believe fracking is the way of the future, and that would happen a lot towards the middle part of the country, upper north part of the country as well. Look, Rick Perry, great guy, really solid guy. Again, I like the business guys, though. There are a lot of heads of oil companies, energy companies, international drillers, pipeline companies that I would like to see in the Secretary of Energy field, because look, Donald Trump has said we're going to expand our energy production, make us energy self-sufficient. That's fantastic. There's a reason why the Dow is 50 points away from 20,000 for the first time ever. There's a reason why small business outlook, their optimism levels are soaring. They're exploding off the chart because of, number one, lower corporate taxes, but also cheap energy. If you think of what's going on over the last 10 years, the biggest overhang is that companies starts to get going, whether it's a producer, a transporter, a seller, and oil prices shoot up, gas prices shoot up, and they go, we can't afford to do business anymore in America. When you keep oil prices low, as Greg points out, the economy, the big boys, the adults in the room do better, and business thrives.
Well, and I like this point that I saw earlier, that Jill Stein, the Green Party candidate that pulled votes away from Hillary Clinton in important states like Florida, for example. I don't know if that would have made the difference for her, but because of Jill Stein being there, Hillary Clinton let's just say that you agree with me that maybe Florida could have gone to Hillary's way if Jill Stein hadn't pulled those votes away from her. But now we end up with President-elect Donald Trump, who has appointed to his cabinet the Attorney General from Oklahoma, who is a thorn in the environmentalist side, Rex Tillerson, the CEO of Exxon, and now Rick Perry, the governor of Texas, who will be an energy fossil fuel advocate. What do you think of that?
Well, I think it's ironic, isn't it? Because I think the left is getting sort of their comeuppance, because here you had a moment where people who were in love with Bernie Sanders said, oh, you know, Hillary Clinton's kind of blasé, status quo. I'm not going to vote, especially in states like North Carolina, but you can go up north into Michigan. You know, a lot of people far left just said, no, can't take it. And guess what? This is what you got now. Because to me, it's like the barnyard door is open and you get people, you know, who are, Eric says, oh, great businessmen, great talent. But they have a businessman's view of the world. Their interest is in money and in making themselves and the rich richer.
Innovate and efficiency.
Not in the best
Two things that the government stinks at.
Not in the best interest of all the citizens of the country at all levels. I don't think that anybody, and it's curious to me, your point, Dana, because I heard complaints from the right today saying, oh, you know what, Rex Tillerson and ExxonMobil actually give money to Planned Parenthood. We didn't like that. Right? Oh.
Well, and there's some on the far right are saying, well, he actually said positive things about the Paris deal, the climate deal.
Yeah,
but I think that, Kimberly, he can move from being CEO of Exxon to being the Secretary of State and have different...
He certainly can.
Represent the interests appropriately.
Absolutely. And he was set to retire anyway from Exxon as CEO. That was coming up just in the beginning of next year. So now he's chosen to serve the country. And I have absolutely no doubt that he's going to put all of his efforts, best efforts forward, putting America first and making sure that we are well represented throughout the international community and respected by somebody who actually gets it done and has a tremendous record at Exxon.
I think he gets a big tax break for selling off all his riches.
This is important, and you're 100% right.
Yeah, I know.
As a cabinet member, you get an exemption. You have to divest. Okay, you can't put it in trust and hold it. You have to divest, and when you do, you're allowed a tax exemption on all the money. So in other words, if you have accumulated wealth,
because it's considered public service.
This is a lot.
So this is one of the big
reasons why some of these guys want to do it. No doubt.
So in this Christmas season, angels, everybody's an angel. Please wake up.
Well.
Poor Juan.
Putting Perry in charge of the Department of Energy, it's like putting Charlie Sheen in charge of your pornography. We know what's going on. But this is refreshing because the left has operated so long under the idea that their dorm rooms were heated by, you know, magical thinking and folk music. This is how the world works. All of these people that are being tapped have some kind of link to the real world.
Yeah.
How things are made, not how things are thought of.
Right.
And that is a huge difference. And people aren't, I think that's why the left is convulsing, because you're seeing a shift from magical thinking to the hard, cold reality of doing things.
Right, from meta theory to practicality.
Yeah.
And that's
all right,
what I like.
Coming up.